Welcome to the Office of Global Engagement's presentation on curricular practical training. You'll be working with your primary immigration advisor with the Office of Global Engagement to initiate any requests. Those requests are processed through our portal, but you want to make sure that you know who your primary immigration advisor is in order to follow up if you have questions after you've submitted your request in the International Students and Scholars portal. But today we're going to be talking about what CPT allows, some of the limitations, as well as the timeline and requirements for that CPT. Just a reminder, with all employment authorizations, it's important for the student to understand the scope of this authorization, because any employment authorization needs to be well documented, as well as make sure that they have the proper paperwork for future follow-up. It's the student's responsibility to make sure that any requests for CPT are requested in a timely manner, that they don't break any of the rules surrounding that CPT, and that they are still always maintaining their F1 status. Curricular practical training is essentially an internship opportunity tied to your academic program. It's important to note that CPT has to be done in your field of study. It is not an option for you to be able to work off campus. It is only allowed because it enhances your degree or your opportunity in that degree. When we look at CPT, there are some important limits when we look at authorizing it. Many students want to work for a summer, or they want to work for 2 summers, and they'll work with their program to see, does this make sense? If you exceed 12 months of full-time CPT at any point, whether it's in your current degree or a degree that's at the same level, you would be ineligible for an optional practical training benefit. So what that means is, say you did a bachelor's degree in biology and you participated in a 4-month internship at full time, but then you changed or finished that degree and you went to another bachelor's degree and did another CPT for an additional, 9 months. At that point, you would be ineligible for that OPT benefit. So paying attention to how much full-time CPT that you accrue and any use of any employment throughout your degree is important, because it can have impacts on your opportunity to get optional practical training authorized, future visa status or change of status, or even that H-1B petition, which many of our international students participate in. You want to make sure that any time that you request CPT and it's authorized, that you maintain and obtain a new I-20 from your primary immigration advisor. The reason why this is important is that even if it's not needed or it's not caught when you're getting OPT, I have had many students, when they get to the H-1B process, have to track down copies of all their prior I-20s, and the ones that they're going to specifically look for is any time employment was authorized. So in the SEVIS system, they can see that a CPT was authorized. You want to make sure you have that I-20. Kind of just the general overview of CPT. What happens is a student is thinking about an internship opportunity. What we recommend is that you go to the portal first. And the reason why we send you to the portal is because it's going to have information beyond the questions that you might have for your advisor. And so if you take the time to go through the portal, it'll answer questions about what's the timeline, what do I need, what are the links, where are the websites that I go to, has anything changed on the cost? And so always go to your portal and start that request. Just because you start it doesn't mean that you have to submit it at that time, or maybe your question is answered and you decide to not continue at that point because you determine either you're not eligible or that you have to wait. So in the portal, you can start a request, you can submit a request, but until it's submitted, it sits in a pending status. But on those requests, if you are planning to start a job, and you've already talked to your department and you know that it's going to work, you want to make sure that you're submitting that request at least 2 weeks before that internship employment start date. And the reason for that is that it has to go through a verification process with your advisor or your graduate program coordinator, and they may not be sitting at their desk and they might need some time to process it, and then we might get into it and see that it's incomplete. So make sure that you've submitted that in a timely manner, because we can't guarantee that we can get you a new I-20 by your start date unless it was submitted in a timely manner. Once we've received that request, we're going to review it, and we're going to turn around that new I-20 to you in 3 to 5 business days. You are not able to start work until you have that new I-20. Again, remember that that I-20 is what shows that you're eligible to have that CPT employment. This is not like OPT where you're requesting an employment authorization document. So that I-20 is the only thing that shows that you have that date. An employer has every right to request that you have that I-20 with the first day of employment in hand, the day that you start work. And this is important because we can't backdate any CPT. And so if you started work without that I-20, that time period would be considered illegal employment. And you don't want to have any unauthorized employment in your history. For CPT, one, you have to have maintaining your status. And maintaining your status is, as a student, means that you've registered every semester, that you're reporting your biographical information. That includes your phone, your email, your address, anytime you move. And that includes in summer semesters, because if you're still in the US, we should have an address for you year round. So just because maybe you're not registered, if you're here in the US in the summertime, make sure you're updating your MyUSU account. In addition to that, so students requesting CPT have to have maintained registration for at least 2 semesters. So there are some small exceptions to that, but in general, you have to have attended a full academic year and been a full-time student. And you have to have, outside of that, if you were to request CPT, it has to be driven by the program. So if your program mandates that you participate in a CPT your first semester, that's the only time we're really going to be looking at it, is if every student who participates in that degree has to take a CPT that first semester, then we would look at authorizing it. If not, that 1 year academic year needs to be met. In addition, you know, it has to be something that is related to your field of study, and it should be appropriate to your degree level and your major. So if you're a PhD student, we don't want to see an entry-level position. We want to see something that's actually relatable, but also appropriate for the academic degree that you're seeking. So again, I already mentioned that we can't backdate that, so make sure that you have everything in place before actually requesting that CPT. And then in addition, one thing that students don't realize is that with CPT, it actually, because it's academic and because it has to be related to your field of study, you know, you have to be registering for credit to have that CPT. And so you are going to be registering for credits in the semester that you're participating in that CPT. So if you're registered for a summer internship and then you get a job offer for a summer internship, at that point, you're going to go in and complete that CPT request in the ISSS portal. So in addition, you know, you can't just go work for your friend who is authorized to work at another employer. You have to be working for someone who is not an F1 or J1 student. So make sure that if you're looking at this employment opportunity, it meets all of those requirements. In addition, you have to have all of your documents in place. So if you don't have a valid passport, you want to make sure that you get that taken care of as soon as possible. While you're here in the US, you should always have a valid passport. And that passport should be 6 months into the future, always. This gives you times to work with your embassy. It allows for, you know, things like unexpected things like COVID or other things. You want to make sure that you're looking at your documents in the future. Now, CPT is just for students who are in F1 status. And how we determine if it's in your field of study is, again, if we're looking at your education level and we're looking at your major, we want to see that that option for internship is related to the major one on your I-20. If it's not on the major one field, we want to make sure that we're looking at, I have students who will often have multiple degrees. Maybe they're seeking a dual PhD or, you know, something. Make sure that as it pertains to your I-20, that it's related to the major on your I-20, because that's how it syncs up in SEVIS, that we're authorizing it for this particular degree. When we look at types of allowable CPT, again, it has to be a requirement. There's two types of CPT. When it's required for the degree, for instance, our psychology students must participate in a CPT prior to their degree in order to obtain their degree. So when it's a requirement of the degree, that's probably one of the most common CPT options. You know, in this requirement, you know, if your degree requires that it be full-time or part-time, we can authorize it. But again, it comes back to the academic department requirement. And we're going to want to see documentation that supports that requirement. When we look at course credit CPT, so this would be, say for instance, you're enrolling in a course to earn a grade that is applicable to your plan of study. That's when we're going to look at course credits. So say for instance, in your plan of study, you can take X course for 1 to 3 credits, and it's an internship course, or you can take some other course. When it's course-based, we're happy to authorize it, but again, we want to see documentation that it's part of the allowable requirements within your program. And if you're not in a program, we might require additional explanation or documentation to show why, say maybe you're not associated with a major yet. We really want to make sure that if we're authorizing something, that it has a place in your program of study, that it makes sense. And if we don't have that, we may deny your request. On that registration during CPT. So when we authorize CPT, we are looking at that registration for that particular semester. So when we're looking at CPT, it can take place in fall, spring, or summer. We're going to be authorizing it by a semester basis because, again, registration each semester is required. If you're looking at a longer period of time, for instance, we have students who will request to work the full summer, and their department will be able to support the credits based on their course alignment. When they authorize that, they may request like May 4th through August 30th. That means that, you know, the semester ends, you know, before that August 30th date, but the next semester hasn't begun. That would be appropriate. However, if the requested dates extend into the next semester, registration at that point would be required. And so make sure that you're looking at how those dates plan out. If they align with the semester and they are appropriate for your degree and the credits that you're registering for, that's great. Employment dates and hours. So a lot of questions are always asked on how many hours can I work, you know, and what semesters. So as international students, students are limited to working on campus 20 hours per week in an academic semester, which is the fall and spring semesters. So when we look at what are we authorizing and when does it make sense, we're going to be looking at what are your current limitations, what are you already currently limited with, to see if we can authorize a CPT. We can authorize full-time CPT during those fall and spring semesters, but only if it is a degree requirement for all students. Generally, most CPT is done in the summer because in the summertime you can do full-time authorization. But in that fall and spring semester, we're going to be very critical about why are you doing it, why is it needed, and then how are you going to maintain your status while you're doing the CPT. Remember, you know, your first primary responsibility is to be a fully enrolled student. And so does this CPT impact your ability to maintain your status? We're going to review that and make sure that you're able to meet all of the requirements to maintain your status. We don't generally ever recommend that students are participating in CPT in their final semester. But again, if it's happening in your final semester, again, you're limited to that 20 hours per week. Summer CPT, since that is the most common time that students take advantage of CPT, you can participate in 20 or more hours. And as long as it's not your first or your final semester in your degree program, again, you can do that 40 hours. But if it's your first or your last, we're going to be looking at that limitation. Since summer CPT is the most common CPT that students participate in, we're going to elaborate a little bit on some of those limitations. So during the summer, as long as it's authorized, you're able to work more than 20 hours per week. However, if it's your first or your final semester, we're going to limit you to that 20 hours. So, often for our students, they're concerned, like, I can't find a job. Remember that CPT can be authorized for full-time or part-time. And if it's part-time, it's not going to count towards your 12-month limit on CPT and impact potentially your post-degree optional practical training. But again, if we're authorizing full-time CPT during that final semester, it has to be a degree requirement if we're looking at full-time. So when students are looking at, what is they're doing, we want to see students authorized for summer CPT registering for their next semester. Because again, doing CPT in your final semester can be challenging and can throw a flag for possibly your OPT application. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting that hour requirement, that you're fully registered, and that it's not going to impact any future benefit. So those are some things that you might end up talking to your immigration advisor about. Okay, how does this impact what I want to do in the future? And giving us kind of, your big picture helps us as advisors give you a better breakdown of some of those limitations. So again, remember that we can authorize employment in the summer up through the last day in the summer, but before the first day of the next semester. When you're talking about applying, again, our system, the International Students and Scholars Portal, we're asking for 3 to 5 business days, excluding weekends and holidays, to process that request. And again, if you're submitting it, 2 weeks prior to your employment start date, and you're allowing for this, as well as time for your advisor to do the verifications, that should be sufficient. However, if it's not clear that this is an academic requirement, we might need further time to reach out to your department to verify that this is something we can authorize. So again, 2 weeks before is what we recommend, just so we have time to sort through that, but requesting it earlier never hurts as well. So again, the last thing you want to do is start work until you have that I-20 in hand that shows that you have been authorized for CPT. We may be behind on processing that CPT, so assuming that it's been authorized is dangerous, because until you have that I-20 in your hands, again, you are making sure that you're in status, and by having that I-20, you know that you're authorized. You have evidence in your hands and in your documents that you have been authorized. So again, 2 weeks prior to the employment start date, you want to make sure that you submit that, start that request in the portal. You're going to enroll in the appropriate courses that are tied to your major. You're going to obtain from the employer an offer letter that's on company letterhead that says, who are you working for? Where are you going to be working? What is that start date for that employer? What is your job title? Is it full-time or part-time? And your supervisor's contact information. And it's great to always have their name, their email, and their phone number. The reason why we put that in there is we're reporting it to CVIS. Who are you working for? Where are you working? Do we know where you are? Are you working remotely from home? All of that should be in your letter from your employer. And if you have a good letter from your employer, that's also going to help you if you have never applied for a Social Security number. So once you have that employment letter, you're going to go in and you're going to complete that request in the International Students and Scholars portal. Again, you're going to start it to get the instructions, but once you have everything, you're going to complete it. And once you've completed it, the day that you complete it, it'll be in our system the next morning, and that 3 to 5 business days clock will start. And then we'll process that new I-20 for you, contact you if we have questions or if we are missing something. And then once you're available, your I-20 is available, you can pick that up at our office or have it shipped to you. Again, that I-20 is evidence of your eligibility to work. So with CPT, it's important to note, unlike with optional practical training, that your primary advisor is going to be processing your request, giving you that new I-20. Unlike optional practical training, that's going to be authorized by USCIS. So the turnaround is relatively quick, but we do need you to submit that in a timely manner and then work with your team. If needed, if you have questions, you can make an appointment with our peer advisor if you have questions regarding a form, or you can reach out to your primary immigration advisor, and that breakdown can be found on our website at globalengagement.usu.edu. That's also where you can schedule an appointment, but we look forward to seeing your request and answering your questions. Thank you for your time.